Tim, take it away.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can
Yes,
you hear
sir.
me now?
Yes.
Let me try and get this thing all chucked up here where I can do what I need to do. Do you see my presentation?
There'll be a lag. It's not there yet. I still don't see it. It doesn't appear it's taking.
Okay. Hang on.
Now it's coming. There it is.
Okay. I'm going to do something here real quick. Okay, you see that. Okay. I think I'm ready now.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, welcome everybody. I lost count of how many days of lockdown we have, and we've got bigger fish frying out there in the world right now. So let's take half an hour and forget about what's going on outside and talk about electricity. Leave all the politics and the crazy garbage just happening to out of our control here. Today we're gonna just a real I guess there is still some feedback. There you go.
Everything sounds okay here.
Okay, so today we're going to be using the, eventually we're going to get to the MD4000 and, hang on a second here. Yeah. We're going to do some hands-on stuff in a little bit, but we've got a little bit of an intro here and I want to talk about that for a second here. We call this Creative Ways to Teach Electricity, and Jeff had a really good idea to change it to the word two, because I invited him to be kind of part of this today. We've been discussing webinars and distance learning, and perhaps you all have, I hear the same, I guess, frustrations from everybody. It's kind of hard to teach without some feedback. And so I decided I'm going to bring my feedback with me. And so Jeff and I are going to kind of have a conversation, and you all get to kind of just sit and listen, and eventually we'll get to where we can have a question and answer at the very end. But I just want to kind of have you hold on to it. And Jimmy, you can still hear me?
Yes, no problems.
Okay. I kind of watch the chat and grab if there's questions that come up. I'm not sure they will, but if they do, then we can kind of discuss it at the very end here.
No problem.
So, hey, Jeff, you still there? It's got to be two for Creative Ways to Teach. I need Jeff here. You're muted. Or you're locking up my computer, one or the other.
Jeff, we cannot hear you. Here he comes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. That was a sound fail, so we'll move on. Okay.
Trying to drag this presentation down now. What's the deal? So, hey, thanks for coming. Thanks for being the two of this teaching thing. This is probably a conversation Jeff and I have had off and on for a long time. I mean, we've discussed, how to get, I guess, entry-level people into the world of electricity. When I first started teaching, I realized that I had been turning a wrench for 25 years, and probably, in all honesty, was just a lucky guy with a test light. I'm not really sure I ever understood 100% of how electricity worked, and when I went to go teach it, I definitely knew I couldn't explain it. And there was some of it that was just intuitive, and it didn't express well when I tried to convey that thought to students. So I searched around and looked for different concepts, and I always kind of say I went hunting. And so I'd go to events like these, and take classes from people that were a whole lot more smart than myself, more smarter. You know, Dave Scaler, Chris Chesney, George Minshew, John Thornton, even Craig Van Battenberg and Vince Michelli. And I would hunt and gather and bring things back to my program. I think, Jeff, you did the same thing probably.
Pretty much, yeah. That's I found out early on that doing Ohm's Law calculations on the whiteboard was not the best way to teach electrical. It wasn't my learning style or preference either, but I thought that was the right way, and I failed miserably the first few years I did that.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, it really is. It's hard to find a way that's going to fit all, and I'm not sure what you're going to hear here in the next 3 days is going to be anything that fits everyone. But we're going to throw out some ideas, and this is strictly from a teacher's point of view. I was kind of joking with Jeff earlier that, you know, the depth of the webinars that we've been given with Dick and Rick and Al, we're gonna surface so hard this week that you're going to get the bends. I mean, this is going to be a lot simpler type of I guess information, a lot easier information to understand. So I would encourage you to go to training, and I'll say that and I'll leave this slide here. I don't know what training in the future is going to look like, and you're at training right now, so I applaud you for that. So, Jeff, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is electrical understanding?
Well, for when I was in the teaching in the program at the technical college, one of my baseline must walk out the door at the end of the program was to be able to do repetitively with confidence ground reference voltage drop tests and starting and charging system analysis and to test the batteries. Because if we don't have the basics of the whole system, then it really doesn't, in my view, it doesn't do much good to teach CAN bus. We have to be able to fix the dim light bulbs that come into the bays. And for heavy duty students, since I taught heavy duty, that was really important. A lot of heavy duty guys really weren't very strong in electrical. So I would rate it a 10.
Yeah, I think we hear that everywhere we go. I mean, it's probably one of the most important thing. And, you know, I included the word basic in the description for this class today, and we've had discussions about how to title sessions, and the word basic seemed to scare people off because they're like, well, I don't need basic. I already get basic. And I don't want to argue. I just think that there's nothing wrong with going back to basics and to looking at it from a new learner's point of view. And bear in mind that we assume things that other people know that they may or may not know. And so I want to kind of take it a real slow walk. We're not going to be trying to rush a lot of stuff in here in the next few days. We're just going to kind of savor the moment, and hopefully you will find some teaching techniques that you can take back to your class and get through to your students. Because like I said in the post today on social media, I believe they deserve it. So, you know, when we start looking at anything automotive, how do you diagnose anything automotive? I kind of believe you have to understand how it works first. And so how do you diagnose anything electrical? I think you have to probably measure it. You have to understand how it works, you have to measure it, and you have to know what the expected results are going to be. You know, I mean, I can put a meter on anything, and if I don't really know what to expect, then I'm not getting much out of that reading, so to speak. So what do we measure, Jeff? Go ahead.
Tim, I would add that, you know, we measure a 2x4, and a 2x4 isn't actually 2 inches by 4 inches. It's a nominal measurement. But when we're measuring electrical, I want 2 places past the decimal point, at least, in accuracy. And I make that very clear from the beginning of my class, even when we were doing some fabrication, drilling holes, all those sorts of things. Accuracy. You have to be accurate.
You know, I was thinking of just diagnosing in general, and not so much the accuracy. I get that. We're going to get there. I said, how do you diagnose what to wear outside today? You know, you check the temperature. You measure the temperature. How do you diagnose what size shoes you're supposed to wear? You measure your feet. How do you diagnose, how far it is to the store and back? You look at a map, or you measure the distance, basically. My favorite is, how do I diagnose how much weight I've gained since the quarantine? And it's basically, I get on a scale. These are all somewhat good examples of, I guess, expecting what you're going to measure. I mean, if it's cold out, I kind of know I'm going to have to wear something, but I want to know how cold. And again, if I get on the scale, I'm not stupid. I probably know, how many pounds I've gained since I've been sitting around doing nothing. So, but you're right. In the world of electricity, what do we measure, and how exact do we measure it? So these three come to mind, correct?
Yes.
And I think I think it's important to point out, when we start introducing this to students, that these are just names for electrical properties. These are not units of measurement. This isn't that, second, third, fourth decimal point. This is just the characteristic, or the property, I guess, right? Okay. So you have to remember, as we throw those three words out that we're all really pretty comfortable with, to a new learner, it might look like that. I mean, it might be a total foreign language to them, and they're already kind of panicking because they don't get it. They might have heard of voltage, but they didn't really understand what it was. And then, we throw everything else on it, and it might as well be Italian, like this particular slide here. So, be patient and take time to explain everything to the new learner. If those were properties, what's the measurement then, Jeff, for volts, current, and resistance?
Well, that's a good question.
Or voltage.
So we're measuring volts, amps, and ohms.
And ohms. And I think, these three players have a relationship going, a relationship called electricity. And I think it's important to know how, I guess, what the units of measurement are, but also what the relationship is before you start trying to teach how it all works. So the previous slide talked about the properties, the three properties, and then, like I said, we need to know how these expected relationships become electricity. Now, this is the part that I think just kills everybody. And I don't want to condemn anybody for teaching this way, but this really looks scary when you're a young, I don't know anything about electricity learner. E = I times R. What is that?
Can I add, Tim,
Mm-hmm.
that our students might be amongst that group that when they started introducing letters for numbers in math early on, that they turned their brain off?
Sure. They might have been struggling with numbers.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Turn around. Yeah, well, me too. I mean, I was too. I didn't understand algebra. I kind of get it now because it works. I guess your mind uses it. And we'll say this too. Ohm's Law says that electric current is proportional to voltage and inversely proportional to resistance. I almost fell asleep saying that. I mean, the students are not going to understand what that means. And then there's two more vocabulary words, proportional and inversely proportional, in there that they're not really getting and following. And so right off the bat, they might think like they did back in math class, I don't get this, I'm never going to get this. Even though if a student is an apprentice, an intern perhaps, and he's working alongside someone else, a mentor, the mentor, I hear a lot of times, says, "Oh, I don't use that Ohm's Law. I've never written it. I've never used it in my life." They do. They have it in their heads. They just don't actually maybe put pencil to paper and do it, but they do use it. And just like any other law, it's to be obeyed.
Yes.
So let's look at that one real quick, just for fun. E stands for what? You remember?
Electromotive force.
Why? What is that? So now more vocabulary. This one kind of cracks me up. Intensity, amperage, and current. So now our vocabulary is getting bigger and bigger. Then we have resistance, ohms, and my God, we brought a Greek symbol into this game. From a student's point of view, it might as well have been the artist formerly known as Ohms. I mean, they don't really get what all that means. So what do we do? I mean, I guess, and I'm saying probably how I was somewhat taught electricity when I went to aeronautical school. and it was very cut and dry, very scientific, and et cetera. And they went to remember the algebra thing. And so, we just explained EIR, which makes more confusion than anything. So let's just put the three that we really like, volts, ohms, and amps, and we put it into that little geometric, formula where we said, you remember, if you put your hand over one, you can solve for the other. And in reality, it made my head hurt. I'm not sure if this is what turned it on for you or not, Jeff, but it sure wasn't for me.
I needed a better understanding. We talked about the fact that we repaired more problems by the seat of our pants in the past. And I think I mentioned to you, I don't think that I really understood Ohm's Law until I was 30 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And I have worked as a technician for pay in my dad's shop from the time I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
I just knew to go to the ground side, there's a problem somewhere. It was a green connector probably. And I never learned the voltage drop techniques. Never.
There you go. So I think it's pretty much assumed. It's hard to explain, so. And I remember in high school, they had a pretty cool model. They started off with the water model. Anybody use this model nowadays? Talk about the water tower at the end of town being the battery, holding a whole lot of water very high in the air with the potential of it wanting to leak to the ground. If you punched a hole in it, it would leak. So now we've got, the I guess potential energy, like I said, of the water wanting to go somewhere. That being the battery and that being voltage. And we had the amps, the current. We have current, as a stream, a river is a current. We fish in the current, kind of makes sense. The analogy is a little tighter. And then if we, depending on how we restrict, the flow is to how much current passes, we can use a garden hose or a fire hose, like in this picture here. And then, the resistance, we're going to try to throttle the end of that hose and stop it. So we're adding resistance to the flow. So we're opposing flow. We're becoming the ohm, so to speak. And that kind of made sense, I think, for a while. And then even taking it and deciding what do we do with electricity? We need to harness it. So we're going to add resistance that's good because we're going to generate power out of it. We're going to run it through a big turbine blade, spin it, and generate electricity. And so we've added resistance to the flow of current, and we're going to get work out of it. Now we're almost done with electricity. I get it now, right? Or, are we totally confused? And the part I didn't like about this model is that it really didn't address the ground circuit. It didn't address how does the water get back to the water tower once you let it out of the hose. It goes into the gutter, runs down the street, disappears, magically shows back up in the battery, And so as a result of that, I think 90%, I think we've read 90% of the technicians can't perform a voltage drop test. And I think I saw someone from ASE log on to the chat deal today, and I think their tests show, or I've heard that their tests show that a simple voltage drop is not really done properly by a majority of people out in the field, let alone people learning. So I think, our mission is to take some of the confusion out of this. So why don't we try something kind of fun? Let's look at electricity like we are actually it. I'm going to become electricity. I'm going to become, I'll say, an electron. Scientifically, and this is, Jeff, where you can take a nap, electricity is the movement of a negatively charged electron from atom to atom. That's the old science class, and that's again where we probably clocked out because I didn't want to know about outer valences and orbits and free electrons and how all that worked. I want to know why when I turn a switch on something works. And so really, what does it look like? What is electricity used for? Used to what? Harness electricity to get work done. What kind of work do we get out of electricity, Jeff?
Well, powers our electric motors, magnetic sensors for pickups of rotation. What don't we do with electricity? I think is even a better question because it becomes more and more. as we go to electric drives, we reduce gears and reduce some of those other things. We really need to have an understanding of what's going on.
So when I was trying to explain voltage, I thought I want to kind of see what voltage sees, I guess, or I want to see what the electron sees. So I'm going to kind of become an electron. So I am an electron leaving the battery. I'm also pretty much a workaholic. I like to work. I want to travel through a circuit and I want to do some work. I want to see something for my efforts. That's just my nature. Voltage is my energy to do this work. And remember, we said that was pretty much the point of electricity, was to go do work. So I try and leave the battery, with a full charge of voltage. And let's go decimal points on this one, Jeff. What's a full charge of a electron coming out of the battery?
Me?
Yeah, you with the hand up.
We judge a battery pretty much universally at 12.66 volts as being fully charged, and that 12.4 is a 75% charge, and then when we say nominally 12 volts, if it's just 12 volts, really that's close to a dead battery.
Yeah. So, and a battery could be a complete webinar session in itself.
Oh yeah.
But let's just take the information for now and say a full charge is 12.66. And when I'm stepping out of the battery, I want to use all my energy, but I want to save enough to get back to the battery. And that's starting to explain the circuit. I leave the battery and I come back to the battery, and I'm going to, quote, use my electricity. It's almost like a bank account. I've got 12.6 that I'm going to spend along my travels on the way back to the battery. And it's going to be spent to do work, hopefully, but not always. So, and as long as the path is complete, I will return to the battery. That's part of the Ohms Law. It is law. And so my job is to look at the work needed, how to get to the work, and how to get back from the work, and how to ration out or spend my 12 volts wisely. And spoiler alert, it's called dropping voltage, so to speak, on the way. I'm going to drop voltage on different parts of my circuit and return to the battery.
So what kind of drops are you going to have, Tim?
Go ahead.
So I was going to ask you, what kind of drops do we have, or am I out of turn?
Oh, you're fine. This is open discussion. Well, let's look at this picture here. I mean, I'm leaving the battery, and there's let's say the wire I'm passing through could be a place to drop voltage. This is not even really a complete circuit here. This is electron leaving, lighting the bulb, and going back to the battery. And we're going to go to the MD here in a second and do this, as long as I don't keep talking too long, and see a real simple deal, and know that in that particular circuit, that's the work to be done. There's getting there, doing the work, and getting back. And I'm weaker when I come back because I really spent most of my voltage to light that light bulb. If we back up and say that's what the engineer designed the circuit to do, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to go down and I like to work. The job is to light the light bulb, and I'm going to go do it. Does that make sense? So, but in this simple deal, there's the wire to it, the bulb, and then the wire back.
I want to see
That's
it.
about the only place. Okay. So when I leave the battery, the part that I kind of like is if you can visualize this, just what I just said. When I'm leaving the battery as an electron, I can see the entire path, and I can see what kind of obstacles I'm going to have, whether it's just the load or whether it's going to be quote resistance on the way there or resistance on the way back. And I know I want to come back to the battery, so I'm pretty much ration my voltage out along the way. I can see the entire circuit to the job and the circuit back to the battery.
Show me.
Okay, and this is pretty much the part that I'm getting to, is that I like this because you're going to see the entire road. Okay. Let me try my little magic camera switch here.
Oh, yeah.
So this is this is our MD4000 modular electrical trainer. I like it because you can put different components in there. And in this case, I'm trying to stay focused on a battery, a power supply, and a load, and that's it. I'm not getting real complicated. I realize there's fuses and switches, etc., but I want to just talk about that visual of seeing the entire circuit before, as you're leaving and returning, and how to, I guess, ration out your voltage. So I've got a power supply. I've got it set, and actually I'll do a measurement here to show you. I'm going to go over here and ground at the negative on the battery. And I'm going to prove that right off the bat that we're at 12.6. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay, so I've got two wires that I've already pre-wired. This is the wire to the bulb and from the bulb. So now we have a circuit. We see that there's work being done. We said it could be in light, heat, motion, magnetism. Well, this is in light. And as I left the battery, I'm going to measure it again, I'm 12.6. I made my way down the circuit to right before the load, and I'm going to be what's the expectation? Hopefully. I'll wait, Jeff.
12 volts. 12.6.
Better say 12.6, don't go. So I arrived, and really, I mean, if we want to kind of play voltage drop, we can talk. We left at 12.61. We arrived at 12.61. Probably didn't drop anything on this. We're gonna go across the load, and we're down to 0. So how, if there's 0 volts, Jeff, how come the light's even lit?
Well, your resolution of your meter is not set fine enough to measure the millivolts that'll be dropping on that circuit. So that wire, Kirchhoff's law tells us that there is a voltage drop anytime there is current flow.
Okay. So what's telling us there's current flow?
The light bulb right now.
The fact that it's lit.
Yep.
Okay. And the meter is saying there's 0 volts on the backside, which is, you're saying, to do with that little decimal point right there.
Yes.
So if I go ahead.
I would say that the student needs to understand that that reading is not accurate enough, because there is current flow, there must be a voltage drop, and you're going to show us that.
Okay. So if I like a camera, if I focus in tighter and move the decimal point to the right, actually I'm going out, I'm zooming out. This particular meter is going to go that way first, and now I'm going to come back in. Well, now I've got 2.5 millivolts. So I'm seeing some residual voltage on the back side of the bulb. And like I said earlier, I'm saving enough energy to get back to the battery. So I'm going to come back up here, and I've used it all by the time I get back to the battery, even on the fine scale there.
Yep.
So when I came out, I could see a clear circuit to the bulb, and I could see a clear circuit back. And so I arrived with my full battery charge. I dropped it across the bulb, and I saved just enough to get back to the battery. And that's all fine and dandy. Now, let's look at, again, why I kind of like this particular trainer. I can add components in and not distract you with a whole bunch of stuff. I'm going to put some resistors in here, though. So now, instead of coming out and going straight to the bulb, I'm going to put a resistance in front of you for learning purposes. Generally, in the real world, it's hidden and you have to find it. But I'm going to put 100 ohms in front of this bulb. And see the difference in brightness?
Yes.
So now, as an electron, I'm popping up out of this battery, and I'm looking down there, and I see this dude right here.
That's the rough road.
Right. And I have to calibrate because there's still current flowing. I'm going to drop all my voltage to get back to the battery. I just have to ration it out to here and here now. So in essence, there's two loads in the battery.
Yes.
And the expectation as a student or a teacher is it leaves the battery full charge. He arrives at that first block in the circuit, the first resistance in the circuit, full charge. But to get through that resistance, because
what do we expect?
I used to joke with my students, I want to see a tattoo on your arm for voltage drop, and it's the definition is the loss of voltage by passing current through resistance. And if you don't have all three, you don't have a voltage drop. Well, we have current because we can see we're lighting a bulb. We have voltage and we have amperage. So right now we're passing current through this resistance, and on the back side, I don't really know how many volts we're going to have. I need to go back to my other scale there. So almost 2.6 volts made it past that resistor. So as an electron, I rationed my voltage out. I saw that I had 12 to spare. I probably dropped 10 on this.
Yep.
I made it through with 2.6. I go through the next part of the circuit here. I get to the bulb. I've still got 2.6 there, and I've lit the bulb, but I don't have hardly any energy left to light the bulb. I do my best job because I like to work, and that's the way it is. And then I leave the battery with enough to make it, the bulb with enough to make it back to the battery. And so we start talking about voltage drops. Jeff's big on a ground reference voltage, meaning we leave the meter stabbed at the battery, I call it, stabbed at the battery post, grounded, and then I come down with my lead just like we did, and I measure it. It's 12.6 going in, it's 2.6 coming out, so we drop 10 volts there. This is where I would tell my students, I like you to come up with having checked something 3 or 4 different ways, so I want you to do a different kind of a voltage drop. I want you to pick up the ground, and I want you to come over here and actually go across that resistor and get that math. Let the meter do the math this time. So now I've verified it both by ground reference, and then I've come up, picked the meter up, and done both leads on different sections of the circuit, and found 10 volts drop right over there. I can do the same thing by coming up back over here and picking it up, the last 2 off of the bulb. So let's think about that for a bit. That was probably the most simple lesson you've ever had on for electrical. Spend a little bit of time trying to kind of talk about the visuals, I guess, and hang on a second here.
Yeah, can I insert something here?
Yes.
So what I've found, what I've studied in how the mind works, we need repetition, especially with something like this. And then we need a time frame. We can't data dump everything. We can't fire hose all the information one day and expect the students to pick that up and be proficient at it the next day. We need to provide instruction one day, and then maybe 3 days later on the same thing, and then maybe a week later again on the same thing. I've had actually the instructor at the program that I left now has come back to me and he said, I never really understood why you repetitively made us do these tests. Well, the repetition was so that you got used to doing a process similar to what Tim is doing, so that you can, every time you go out to the vehicle, you can do the same test.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording, but you guys keep going because this is good stuff.